I'll lead it. I'll lead it. Welcome back, everybody. This is Oscar Creed here at the Lowe Zone. We're here for episode 9. Um, Today, we're talking about a handful of topics. We've got some pretty interesting storylines as the regular season comes to a close. And today, we have a special guest, Seamus Zarlingo of Celtics Every Day. Seamus, how are you, man?
I'm great. I'm glad to be back here talking hoops. I love hopping on anyone's show at any point, talking any basketball. It's one of my favorite topics on this great planet of Earth. Been a little busy. Last month I went to 16 different states in the United States, but I'm a little bit more grounded in April, and I'm going to be in for some playoff basketball coming
Well,
up.
good,
Y'all know
good.
what I mean.
I gotta say, Seamus, I'm a very big fan of your account, the dedication that you put in to that page. I was unaware why you were absent for so long, and I was hoping everything was okay, but I guess you were out traveling and uh, seeing the country. That's nice. Well, we're glad you're back, and today, yeah, we'd love to have your insight. We're going to talk some Celtics basketball, and you can give us your insight towards the end of the show. We're going to be talking about our top 10 favorite Celtics jerseys, and I know there's not a lot of Celtics jerseys to pick from, considering they're a very traditional team, but there are some cool alternate city statement jerseys as of late that I'd love to cover. So we're going to open the show today. We're going to talk about some playoff clinching scenarios. There are a handful of teams that are fighting for a playoff spot and a play-in spot, particularly in the Eastern Conference. This is where things are really sort of starting to heat up. Um, we have Chicago in the 10th seed. They right now are the front runners to secure the final play-in spot. Right behind them at 11 is Washington. At 12 and 13, both standing 33 and 44, the Indiana Pacers and none other than my Orlando Magic. There are a handful of scenarios. Justin, if you have the graphic, I'd love to see it up because I don't have the notes on me right now.
Yeah.
But it looks like, speaking of actual playoff spots, we have the Knicks. They could clinch their playoff spot tonight if they beat the Wizards, which is a likely situation considering the Wizards have been very inconsistent lately. Sacramento could take home their first division title since I don't know when. God, it's been too long. Indiana and Orlando, as I mentioned, they could be eliminated tonight if they both lose and Chicago takes the win against Memphis, which is actually happening in 20 minutes from now. And finally, Washington. They will be eliminated with a loss to New York tonight, or a Chicago and Atlanta win, and either a Toronto or Indiana loss. Guys, who do you see taking the final play-in spot? Because it kind of seems like the 7, 8, 9 seed are pretty much guaranteed at this point. 5 games left, about give or take. Where do we see the Chicago Bulls finishing? Who might take their spot? Seamus, what do you think?
Well, I like the Bulls in this scenario just simply because they have star power and obviously too some experience both on their bench and within their lineup. Looking at the entirety of the playoff scenario, though, in the East, the bottom, some of these teams that are just hanging on, fringing right there at the 10 spot, I think actually want to be eliminated at this point so they can go full on tank mode. Like your Orlando Magic, the Indiana Pacers, they're on the brink of elimination tonight. And ultimately, those teams want to be in a mode now where they can just rest their young guys and tank the rest of the way. I know that's, kind of a taboo word to use in the NBA sometimes because no team likes to just go out and lose outright. But at this point in time, we do have a good class of men coming in for this next year's draft. And ultimately, some of these teams, including the Wizards, you have a lot of nice pieces there, but what is a 10 seed really going to do for you this season other than, another game of revenue in the play-in spot? And ultimately the Bulls, I think they benefit from potentially attaining that 10 spot simply because they're in a spot of proving it with this particular roster, whereas the Wizards, Pacers, and Magic, who are just clinging on, fringing right there, they're more in a rebuilding spot, retooling spot, where I believe a lower seed would actually benefit them more than the Bulls having a lower seed per se. So in this scenario, I like the Bulls to grab the 10 spot just simply because of the outlook each team is really looking at going into the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. I was sorry, Justin. I was just going to say the Bulls definitely are the team that has the most to lose here if they end up slipping and somehow giving this to the Washington Wizards. Even though the Wizards have quite a bit to lose too. Kuzma's pending free agency, I believe. Kristaps said he wants to re-sign, but what is a duo of Beal and Kristaps going to do for the Wizards, especially if it gets them the 11 seed or 10 seed, right? Justin, what were you going to say?
I just think that the 7 through 10 seeds right now are the consistent 7 to 10 seeds. I think that's where all these teams finish. You might see interchangeable between Toronto and Atlanta, but I think the gap is fairly large. When we go and we compare conferences, you know, the 4th seed to the 13th seed in the Western Conference is still so tight. And then you look at the Eastern Conference, and there's a 2.5 game gap between 7th and 8th place. And then you look at the 10th to 11th place, it's a 3 game gap. And things need to go perfect for teams like the Orlando Magic, the Indiana Pacers, and the Washington Wizards. And things really need to go to hell for the Chicago Bulls. But knowing the Bulls over the last year, 2 years, that's probably not that hard to do for Chicago to just completely, poop the bed. But I think what we see right now on paper is how it's going to end up. Like I said, the 8th and 9th seed, that those could be interchangeable, but that really would probably only be get to see who plays on the road versus who gets to play at home in their first play-in game. I think Miami gets into the playoffs, and I honestly, people aren't talking about the Toronto Raptors. I know, they got some coaching problems that we'll talk about later on in the show, but I think the Raptors and what Jakob Poeltl has brought to the team in the second half of the season, and if Siakam, if everybody can stay healthy, I know those are big ifs, but I like to see Miami and Toronto in that 7th and 8th seed.
It always blew my mind, and I keep coming back to this point that people really thought the Raptors oversold for Jakob Poeltl and his services. It blew my mind because I knew, well, just literally at face value, watching the Raptors play, you could tell you are not going to win anything with Christian Koloko and Chris Boucher running the 5. They're too frail. One of them's not ready, and both can't really grab boards consistently, right? Jakob Poeltl's the guy down low who you just need. And it comes back to that theme that I touched on earlier. The traditional big man in today's NBA is slowly becoming more and more valuable. I also wanted to touch on really quickly, Seamus, you made a point about how these teams, the Wizards, the Pacers, and the Magic are kind of shutting their young guys down. It's funny because when I watch the Wizards play, they're clearly, sitting Bradley Beal and Kyle Kuzma because they're like, look, this 10 seed, we don't have faith in our team, and we don't really feel comfortable putting our guys' health on the line for such a minuscule chance at pulling out a win. On the other hand, the Orlando Magic have looked really eager, and they truthfully believe that they can somehow slip into this 10 seed. It's next to impossible. They have to win all 5 of their next games, 2 of which are against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have already established the top 4. I believe they're 4 or 5 in the East. And I don't see it going that way. So in order for the Magic to even stay alive tonight, they have to beat the Detroit Pistons, which I expect them to do. And the Bulls have to lose to the Grizzlies, which I also expect them to do. But then again, it's the end of the season. Who knows if Memphis is really pushing to get a win tonight. That being said, I do feel like I agree with you, Justin. I think that looking at it right now, the 4 teams that hold the play-in spots have earned those play-in spots season all the way throughout the season. I do think that the Raptors and the Heat are the most likely to make it out into the playoffs, considering Toronto's playoff experience and Miami's leadership. It just seems like that's the most likely scenario. I don't have much faith in the Atlanta Hawks right now, but what's your point?
I want to ask you, as somebody who covers the Orlando Magic on a day-to-day basis. You know what's going on with the team. You're around the team 24/7. What's that like as a Magic fan, and how do you want the season to end? Because obviously the Orlando Magic are getting a lot more competitive than they have been in previous years since the bubble. I believe that was the last time they made the playoffs. Are you looking for them to trend upwards? Are you looking for them to, it's too late to tank for Wembanyama. It's too late to go after Scoot Henderson. Where are you kind of standing right now? I mean, this is like 1 foot in, 1 foot out for you.
The thing is, we benefit both ways. If the Chicago Bulls are able to secure a play-in spot, And I think I again, I could be wrong on this. If they do secure a playoff spot as well, we get their first round pick this year, and we will also have the Orlando Magic will also have a first round pick. So if things go that way, best case scenario draft wise, we'll have two lottery picks going into the draft this summer. And if we end up making it, if we pull off this Cinderella run, we're establishing a winning culture for young guys. I think that's a really slept on aspect. People, for the last 6 years, we've talked about how tanking has become this new phenomenon where people, you in order to find success down the road, you need to tank, you need to intentionally lose these games. But what does that do for team morale? What does that do for the future of the players that are on that team? If the Orlando Magic outright went and said, look, we're not going to try and win these games. We're going to sit our young guys and we're going to make sure everything's okay. We kind of lose this edge. Guys like Paolo and Franz look at the team and they say, even in these scenarios, these almost impossible scenarios, they don't have enough faith in us. They don't really want to dedicate themselves to winning. The most slept on part of the Orlando Magic culture has been really focusing on winning this season, and they've exceeded their win total prediction from the beginning of the season by over 10 games at this point. And it's really essential to the Orlando Magic to try and through these next 5 games, try and win every single game. And if you don't, keep trying to win. And you can see that from the Orlando Magic. They're not playing Chuma Okeke, the 16th pick in the 2019 NBA draft. They're not playing Bol anymore. They're not playing Michael Carter-Williams, who we just signed, nor are we playing Jay Scrubb, who we just signed. And I know those aren't huge names, but at the same time, they're guys with some potential, and they mean a lot to the chemistry of this team. We are choosing not to play them because we want to stick to a 9-man rotation that we know can get a win against some playoff caliber teams.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is ultimately the part of the season in which tanking is okay, but tanking has completely gone rampant in the NBA over the last 10 years because ultimately at this point in the season, losing a couple extra games because you're resting your top guys is totally fine. But ultimately when you take an entire season, say like the Houston Rockets, essentially since James Harden left the equation in Houston, they've been in tank mode. They have never been in a position to win. They've acquired John Wall back after sitting him for a whole season last season. You look at a situation like Houston, and that situation is the pinnacle of what tanking has become ultimately. And some teams, of course, do need to watch out for this. That being said, there is a surplus of talent in the league nowadays, and you do see a lot more teams like the Orlando Magic and even Indiana Pacers where they were in the equation for a big part of the season and even continue to be even up until tonight with 5-6 games left to go for most teams. And hopefully moving forward you see a lot more of that throughout the league and teams trying to compete to the last couple games of the season, and instead of what we've seen over the past 10 years or so with some of the bottom feeder teams on usually 12, 13 and down, 14, 15 in both conferences. It's been rough the last 10 years, but I do have hope for the future ultimately.
It's funny because, in years prior, we would never have thought that the 12 and 13 seeds would actually have a chance or even want to have a chance at making this play-in push. I think that the exclamation point on winning has gotten bigger, and I think that teams are realizing that homegrown talent is also another way to produce wins down the line. And it's good that you talk about the Houston Rockets, because this is where I'd like to transition to. I know we were going to talk about LaMarcus Aldridge, but we'll talk about him after. I want to talk about Stephen Silas and the Houston Rockets because there's been a report that came through recently where it said that Stephen Silas broke down in front of the Houston Rockets team earlier this season because he just felt like he couldn't connect with the Rockets core, the young guys on that team. I think the oldest player on that team is Boban Marjanovic, who barely sees the floor. And the team is really kind of filled with a lot of young guys who want their touches, who are highlight merchants, I've heard them described as, and bucket getters, right? So, the Silas experiment so far hasn't been phenomenal, but I can tell that, looking at Silas and watching him in post-game interviews, he genuinely cares about these guys. And it feels like maybe there's a lack of reciprocation on the Rockets' part when they think about Silas. They don't really want to connect with him. And I wonder if it's because he's not hard on them enough. I wonder if he's trying to be a more of a player coach. Seamus, what do you think about the situation in Houston right now?
This situation in Houston goes so deep. It goes so beyond Steven Silas. And I honestly believe Steven Silas, if put in another situation, could actually thrive with other young guys. But ultimately, personalities that's something to be said when drafting players and ultimately just handling players, coaches, anyone in the organization in general. The Houston Rockets, I have a large question on what personalities they've actually been catering to the past decade. First, James Harden. They essentially gave James Harden whatever he wanted for an entire decade, only for him to turn around and stab him in the back, ultimately, at the end of the day, whether or not he was leaving to a winning situation. As we see in the NBA, winning situations, if you stay in one spot, they can grow overnight. If you're moving around all the time, you see KD, Kyrie, yes, they're in winning situations today, but you look at both of their teams, not so ideal. Are the Mavericks really a winning situation, by the way? I don't think so. But anyway, maybe Luka. Man, the Houston Rockets, James Harden just boils me up a little bit. The Houston Rockets ultimately have mismanaged personalities greatly over the past decade, and this is no different. They brought in Jalen Green, who before the draft, this guy needs some development. He needs some development to become that next tier star, because ultimately at this point, he's just a young talent. He's just a young star. There's not much more to his game. He hasn't won anything in this league. All he's done is put up a bunch of numbers on losing teams. And we know in the NBA, that's just not going to get it done. That's just not going to get it done. It might get you paid in that situation, but outside of that, it's not going to get it done anywhere else. Jabari Smith, he's still very, very young. He's younger than us. He's younger than us. He needs time. He needs time, ultimately. Kevin Porter Jr., he had personality issues. I don't want to say personality issues, though. Let me backtrack that. There were some questions surrounding him and the status of himself in the locker room at his last stop in Cleveland. Ultimately, they picked him up for cheap. He's been okay on court, but there's been, of course, a couple of situations within the locker room itself in Houston that you wonder and question with this organization. And at the end of the day, you look at it and there's really only one, what do you call it? There's only one, trying to find the word here.
Factor, maybe? Or
there's only one noun. There's only one X here, and it's the Houston Rockets. All right. Yeah. The Houston Rockets are honestly just mismanaging this entire situation. And for the past 3 seasons, they are ultimately one of the teams in which should have been inching towards greater success. However, been just sitting in this cesspool of losing, trying to tank, trying to draft talent when ultimately their drafted talent has experienced no development whatsoever because they've been in this spot for 2 years. And to go along with this, should have just let John Wall play 2 years ago.
Thank you, man. Great. Oh, he was balling too.
Jalen Green next to John Wall 2 years ago. That would have been great for his development. Instead, John Wall was left to sit on the bench, left to sit at home in Houston. I mean, this situation in Houston, that is the pinnacle of tanking and why teams should not try to lose over and over and over again. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the conversation is centered now on Steven Silas, when in reality, he's just a victim of this organization and their follies over the past however many years now, particularly the last 4 years.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Justin.
Yeah. I think, okay, first of all, wasn't Kevin Porter the one who chucked a soup at an assistant coach in Cleveland?
Yeah, he had, like, when Seamus said personality issues, I'm like, this guy's career has been plagued with personality problems. He slipped to the 30th pick in the draft. He was projected to be like a late lottery pick. And then I think it was Milwaukee drafted him, took a flyer on him and traded him to Cleveland. So things clearly didn't work out there. And you can kind of tell that he's not a point guard. Why the hell are you playing him at point guard? in order to develop him, I know you need experience, but I just don't think that's him. It's not the right system for him.
So I just watched Houston play not too long ago. The Celtics actually lost to them, believe it or not. The worst type of basketball to play is non-team basketball, which is what? A lot of ISO heavy basketball, and that's all they do. It's like they play for themselves. They don't play for each other, and that's an issue. And is that something that the coach can control? He can put his word in. That don't mean the players are going to listen. I feel like it's a mentality. I feel like these guys are so accustomed to losing and playing for themselves that they're not winning. They're not building good habits. A lot of something that I talk about on the Celtics postgame show is building good habits. Right, playing not winning every game, but building good habits within that. Seamus, you mentioned it last season a lot, embracing the journey. These guys have not embraced the journey. These guys have not bought into winning because they're so accustomed to going out there and playing for themselves and not playing for the team. And excuse me, that's a huge problem. And hey, I know Dagnall's my guy out in OKC, but the Oklahoma City Thunder did the rebuilding thing correctly, right? Like they went out, they traded for a young stud in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They had Lou Dort. They still haven't seen Chet Holmgren on the basketball court yet. Like these guys went out, got the draft picks. They didn't do Russell Westbrook dirty. They didn't do Chris Paul dirty or even Dennis Schroeder dirty. Schroeder had a great season in OKC. They dished out all of those guys, got back draft picks, they got back compensation, they got back young studs, young players, and they did it right.
Yeah.
What has Houston done? What has Houston done?
Yeah, it's the only one on Houston that really plays unselfish basketball is he's one of my favorite players. Alperen Şengün, man. This guy is a treat to watch. I thought it was so funny. I saw this meme where it was like like Pokemon evolution, and it started with Alperen Şengün, and then Sabonis, and then Jokic. And I'm not saying that because they're three white European big men. I'm saying that because the big man position is slowly becoming the most important facilitator in the NBA. And speaking on the Thunder, Shai Alexander-Gilchrist, as Chuck Barkley likes to say, it was really cool to see what the Thunder. What I love most about the Thunder, man, is that they are understanding which young guys have like really kind of proven that they can compete for wins. Guys like Lou Dort, guys like and Jalen Williams. What a wonderful surprise for the Thunder. Josh Giddey. I don't know how the hell they're going to make those three work. You're probably going to have to play Giddey at the three. I'm forgetting their center, but I love their pickups of like Darius Baisley and all that. They're finding these young guys, and their development staff is working on, again, these OKC was pushing for wins this season. Houston was clearly not pushing for wins from the get-go. Maybe that changes next year now that they realize what some of the players' strengths are. Like Jalen Green just needs to take less shots and smarter shots. You know what I mean? His IQ is like in the gutter, and I know that that's kind of like a common piece of rhetoric nowadays, but Jalen Green won't be a winning basketball player until he learns that this game is not just for him. And I think Houston will probably, Seamus put it perfectly, they are just going to stay where they were. I don't think they've reached their win total this season compared to last. I think last season they won 20 games. This season they've won 19. I doubt they exceed that moving forward. I doubt they exceed it.
My thing is, wow, you go after Wembanyama. What do you do with Şengün? Push him to the 4? Do you put him on the bench? What would, I mean, because you have to figure if Houston goes 1, they take Wembanyama, right?
Do they?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Do they? Like, do they go after Wembanyama? Do they go after a forward? Do they go after, I mean, they're stacked on guards, but are they really guards? And,
yeah.
It's like, that's a weird position. And for Houston, I think, we get so dazed by all these names, right? Like obviously Wembanyama, like unbelievable, freakish talent. Do you pass up on him? It's so hard. But you also have to look at the needs more than wants. It's like we really need a true point guard. We really need a forward. Like, it's different for teams like Milwaukee and Boston. When Celtics drafted JD, it was like, oh my God, another guard. It's like, well, what are we really going for here? Like, is it more of a need, or is it more of a want, or is it more of a just push the button, the pick is in, and then boom? But when you have that number one pick, you really have to factor in like, ooh, Wembanyama is a big name. Like, what if we pass on him? But I think like you said, though, the development of Şengün, I mean, that right there, I think he's more the face of the franchise than a Jalen Green or a Kevin
Hands
Porter
down.
Jr. I mean, I don't
Hands
know.
down.
People
Yeah.
debate it. And for me, I think it is so clearly, so evident that it's Alperen Şengün. And I don't even think Houston fans should even be debating that.
No. If I'm Houston, I want to trade. If I end up with the first pick, depending on where someone like Brandon Miller goes, like where he's projected to go, I don't think he'll go first. But I think Brandon Miller would be an absolutely perfect fit in Houston next to Tari Eason, because also you need to invest more into Tari Eason because he's been a phenomenal defensive talent with some offensive promise. Probably move on from Kevin Porter Jr. I'd like to package the first pick with Kevin Porter Jr. for a lower pick and maybe a more serviceable veteran, perhaps. I don't know what team would best suit that need. Seamus, what are you thinking?
All right. Well, first off, common factor is what I was trying to say earlier. The Houston
Nice.
Rockets were the common factor ultimately. And I also want to make another note on this. The Celtics technically traded Alperen Şengün in the Al Horford deal. They traded Walker and a first-round pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Al Horford, and then the Oklahoma City Thunder went and turned around and flipped that to the Rockets.
Oh my
So
God.
another note on that. So the Celtics could have had Şengün too, but then at the expense of Al Horford, of course.
Yeah. Would you rather Horford or Şengün? I mean, like, it's
Well,
for right now, obviously Horford. I know that, but I mean,
right.
it's hard looking back in retrospect. I hear you. I wanted to just quickly touch on Jalen Green's stats. It's really funny.
Sorry, I didn't answer your question though. Wait a minute.
Oh, sorry. You're right. Go ahead. Go for it. Sorry.
Wait. Let's backtrack on this. Wait, what did you ask me?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Houston, just the Houston Rockets. If you end up with the first pick, what are you doing with the first pick? Are you going for Wembanyama or are you trading?
Oh, I'm going for Wembanyama. I mean, if you're trading this pick, you're ultimately trading Wembanyama to whoever is, going to be drafting at number one.
Potentially the Spurs.
Right. And potentially, someone within the range of your own conference or even division. And I know teams don't necessarily, trade, executives say teams don't necessarily trade upon those lines. When you get the best deal out there, you're just going to take it at the end of the day, no matter whether it's in your division conference, the next conference over, no matter what. But
Agreed.
If you do trade it to a historical rival, that would kind of be like the Celtics trading, like a couple of years ago, Markelle Fultz and Tatum, Celtics and Sixers swap ultimately. So you can end up with a deal like that at the end of the day and see yourself like the Sixers being shot in the foot. So if I were the Rockets, I would just keep the pick, make the pick. And at the end of the day, if they wanted to trade Victor Wembanyama, which we'll see, like if they ultimately make the pick, they get the insight on him. And if they want to trade him afterwards, that could happen. So ultimately I would say take that path at the end of the day.
Yeah, so it's almost a win-win situation, but also not a win-win situation for Houston, because how do you gauge talent from these guys in Şengün's second year and Wembanyama's first year? Yeah, if I'm the Rockets, it's so hard to pass up on Wembanyama, and I would almost like try to put one of them at the 4 because of how fluid they are and how sort of versatile Wembanyama is. I bet you could play Wembanyama at the 3 or the 4. It's just a matter of how quick he is in terms of handling the ball and matchup speed. But yeah, it's interesting for the Houston Rockets looking forward. I think there's going to be a lot of roster changes this summer, and if there's not, then we're looking forward to another less than 20 win season coming up. Pivoting to the next topic, we're also going to keep on the topic of coaches. There is some trouble in Toronto right now. Nick Nurse has kind of cryptically pointed to maybe he's not coming back next year as the Raptors head coach. the head coach behind the 2019 Raptors finals run, in which they won the championship that year. He said post game, I'm going to take a few weeks to see where I'm at in terms of his, position with the team. After a reporter asked, what are all these rumors about? He's just going to see how the relationship is with the Raptors organization, because it's been 10 years. He started off as an assistant coach, and now he's established himself as one of the premier coaches in the NBA. Has the league figured Nurse out? Is that what's happening here? They're 1-6 in their last 7 road games. I don't think it's time to push the panic button for the Raptors, but because I honestly, even as a not a Raptors hater, but not a Raptors enjoyer, I respect Nick Nurse, and I think that he's a phenomenal coach, and what he's done for the culture in Toronto is great. I think the players respect him a ton. If they don't, then they've done a great job of keeping that a secret. I have a hard time really believing that Nick Nurse's job is actually in jeopardy, and the only one that's going to be the one to determine if he's the coach next year or not is him. And I think that the Raptors are going to leave it up to him because Masai Ujiri has such a fondness for him. What do you guys think? Do you think Nick Nurse and this Raptors squad is capable of being an actual playoff threat in this play-in spot? Is Jakob Poeltl, if they had Jakob Poeltl at the beginning of the season, do things play out differently for them?
I personally don't think they're that much of a threat this season with the personnel that they have. But in terms of Nick Nurse, I believe he's in one of the most unique coaching positions in the NBA, or at least how he was brought into the NBA, into his position. His first head coaching season was a season in which he won the championship, and the Raptors, they ultimately had to win the championship that season with Kawhi Leonard, because it looked like whether or not they won the championship that season, Kawhi was out the door. They did everything they could. Ultimately, they won the championship at the end of the day, formed a relationship with Kawhi, and he still left to LA. So that first season, a lot of pressure under that team specifically, and he was able to take them all the way to a title. But people forget that team was a veteran-led team with guys who are ready to make a playoff run. And since then, the Raptors have only dwindled in talent, or only added young talent who don't quite know how to win or go through an entire playoff run or go through an entire season and playoff run to be ready for that ultimate moment of potentially winning a championship. Nick Nurse has just not had that team really since 2019-20 inside the bubble. I would say that team minus Kawhi, obviously that was the championship team minus Kawhi that next season, and OG Anunoby, I believe. No, he missed the playoffs in 2019, so he was around. So plus OG minus Kawhi essentially that season. They ultimately maybe could have won the championship if they got past the Celtics at the end of the day. That being said, they didn't. And ever since that point, the Raptors have essentially dropped in the standings. And now Nick Nurse is just at a point in which I'm not so sure his coaching style and his tactics is lining up with the talent in which they have at the moment. And I know they still have a couple of guys around from that era of winning, but you look at the roster back then, they weren't necessarily the main guys. They weren't the main cogs in the entire system. They were add-ons that made the team flourish on the fringes. And now they're being asked of all these responsibilities, and I'm just not so sure that Nick Nurse is in for a developing team as much as he's in for a team that's already ready for a championship. So I think that'll be interesting to see if Nick Nurse does go to a situation where he potentially leads a team that's more ready for a playoff run than, say, the Toronto Raptors, who may need a couple more years.
Yeah, I think you put it beautifully. Sorry, Justin, I apologize. I'll get right back to you in a sec.
Good.
I think you put it beautifully, man. I think that Nick Nurse really kind of is approaching this team as if the roster were the same 3 years ago or 4 years ago at this point. He didn't kind of change his tactics to adhere to a retooling team in a way, because they were still contenders for playoffs, but they knew for a fact, that this wasn't a finals ready team. And the young talent that they do have is mediocre to begin with. Malachi Flynn, the experiment there, hasn't really panned out. Whether you blame Nick Nurse for not giving him enough time, I think he's had a significant amount of time to kind of, fill in the Fred VanVleet backup role. that actually Van Vliet had playing behind Lowry. And again, Siakam was a second option in the finals win. They really do lack that the guy with killer mentality. But I will give Siakam a lot of props for developing his game and becoming a top 5 power forward in the NBA, top 3 arguably. Justin, do you want to touch on this real quick?
Yeah, I respect Nick Nurse a lot. I think him and Kyle Lowry together was horrible. 2 biggest crybabies in the entire NBA. I think we all remember the semifinal series in the bubble against the Celtics.
We were all kept inside, and we watched that series for 7 games.
Yeah,
7 games. We were all
here's
just inside watching Celtics Raptors. I mean,
here's the thing.
How do you think I felt when I saw DJ Augustine absolutely put him to bed with a 0-point performance in Game 1?
And here's the thing, like I lost, and people are gonna say, "Oh, why are you holding a grudge?" and all that, because I forget exactly what game it was, but there was a play at the end of the game, and Nick Nurse was standing there in the corner like a player. Even there were even Raptors fans admitting that that was wrong. Like, I don't know what he was doing.
I remember that.
Standing in the corner, and I forget who, I don't know if it was Tatum or somebody passed it out of bounds thinking he was a player. And even Brad Stevens, all the South, like everybody was trying to tell the official, like, he was standing on the court. He was standing right there. But you can't do that. But look, Nick Nurse, been with the team since 2013, was brought on as an assistant coach. Longtime head coach Dwayne Casey found his way into a new position over in Detroit. Nick Nurse took that position and won a title. And ever since then, they've been the definition of mid, but they're trending downward in a way. They won a title. Here, I have this. They won a title in 2019. Then the following season, a second-round loss to the Boston Celtics in the bubble. Then the very next season, they missed the playoffs the entirety. And then last year, a first-round loss to the Philadelphia 76ers, where the Raptors were able to climb back into that series and force a Game 6 after being down 3-0. But at the same time, they were down 3-0 and nearly got swept. I think Nick Nurse, I think he sees the direction of this team is not going up and it's not going down. It's kind of just staying where it is. And I don't know if I think that's taking a big mental toll on himself. And I find it hard to believe that he sees himself out of the league entirely. I think if he doesn't pick up a head coaching job, I think he would make a really good head assistant coach, right? Like, there's levels to the assistant coaches. I think he would make a good first guy off the bench coach. Joe Mazzulla gets ejected, Nick Nurse is the one that comes up. I think that. But to be honest, man, I agree with you. I don't see a scenario where Nurse could end up as an assistant coach right out of the gates.
Really? I think he.
Maybe not out of the gate, but
no. I know. I think that'll take two stints failed as a head coach elsewhere before people realize that he's not head coach material anymore.
So what situation would he go to? Would he go into a Houston situation where they're already shit in the bed, or would they go to a situation? I mean, Mike Brown's not going to leave Sacramento. You might put Nick Nurse with the Sacramento team, who's on the rise, but they're not going to go away from Mike Brown. Hell, he might be the coach of the year.
I'd love to see him in Portland. Honestly, I don't think that the Chauncey Billups experiment. I don't think the Chauncey Billups experiments worked out very well. And even though the Blazers aren't a phenomenal defensive team, a guy like Nick Nurse and the determination of Damian Lillard could whip that team. If Dame stays in Portland, of course, we don't know what's going to happen this summer. It's sounding more and more like Dame is kind of fed up with everything. I could also see him, if the Orlando Magic are able to build a defensive core around their young guys, I think that it's likely that a coach with Nick Nurse's skill set could fill in for Jamal Mosley if Mosley just can't seem to make that leap with the team. You know what I mean? Like, because these young coaches, they have to be on the same trajectory as the team itself. So I could see him going to a younger team with, talent that's not as mediocre as the young talent in Toronto. Because the first thing that comes to mind when I think of young talent in Toronto is, again, Malachi Flynn and Christian Koloko. Like, what the hell are we doing? And Scotty Barnes, of course, but I view him more as an more established guy. I think he'll deserve another head coaching spot. And if that doesn't work out, I see that trajectory of going to a head assistant role. And speaking of guys that could lose their job and have lost their job, LaMarcus Aldridge chose to call it quits 2 days
Again.
ago. Again, I don't think he did. Oh well, actually, yeah,
That's
that's a
the
good
third
point.
one.
That's a good point. I mean, I'll give him a pass for the first one because of his heart condition. He was diagnosed with a heart condition that I don't know the damn name, Wolf something condition, but it was an irregular heartbeat, a rapid heartbeat, and he was urged not to play basketball anymore. And when it was cleared, he finished off his career in Brooklyn. But a 7-time All-Star, a 5-time All-NBA talent, LaMarcus Aldridge was someone that when I was in high school, I watched his film. I tried to mimic his game because I was not athletic and I couldn't jump too high, so I relied on the mid-range. I think LaMarcus Aldridge,
Terminal
honestly,
white man's disease.
he's the white guy's Jordan. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that LaMarcus Aldridge is a Hall of Famer. I think he's maybe not first ballot, but there's no question in my mind that he'll end up in the Hall one day. What do you guys think? I think the game owes him a lot.
I think for sure he's a Hall of Famer, surefire. Like his entire career, looking at his numbers, how many All-Star selections, All-NBA. I mean, he was one of the people forget, he was really one of the faces of the league right before Steph Curry, and then that era became very apparent. And, LeBron obviously has been a face of the league forever, towering over everybody. But the other stars afterwards, you would always see LaMarcus Aldridge in that spotlight. And, of course, in college, too, what he did at Texas, I believe he's no doubt in the Hall of Fame at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think Chicago's still crying to this day for moving him on draft day. What a terrible move. But honestly, man, yeah, he was the reason that Portland team was so successful when Damian Lillard was on the rise. It hurts me that he didn't stay in Portland because I think that would have been Dame's best chance. Because he was still in his prime when he played in San Antonio. He just had to play behind Kawhi Leonard and
Brandon Roy was on that team as well. Like they
true.
had the Portland Trailblazers. I remember like growing up, like those guys out west those guys are freakishly unbelievable, and it's just unfortunate. Like injuries, like Brandon Roy had to retire. Who's the other one there? Greg Oden drafted.
Oh,
this was
Luke Babbitt.
Luke Babbitt, like these guys, yeah, stud. These guys. Real nice. These guys, though, the Trailblazers have had so many phenomenal teams, especially in that LaMarcus Aldridge era. But due to injuries and just inconsistency, unfortunately, that never got them over the hump, and that never got LaMarcus Aldridge an NBA championship. But yeah, I think for sure Hall of Famer.
They had a stellar win percentage when all three played. Sorry, James. I know you want to talk about Brandon Roy.
Oh, no. Brandon Roy, of course. I mean, if he was healthy and you bring in LaMarcus Aldridge to the equation and still say if they drafted Damian Lillard, say 2014, they faced the Spurs in the second round, how does that go? But I will say LaMarcus Aldridge was on both sides of the spectrum of both eliminating one's ego from the court and letting his ego maybe take him over a little bit. In Portland, Damian Lillard, the story goes, Damian Lillard was taking over the reins a little bit, and that's ultimately what kind of pushed him out the door to San Antonio. Now, of course, San Antonio was still a nice spot, still a good opportunity to win out west, but could have stayed in Portland with, of course, Damian Lillard. They had CJ McCollum at that moment as well. That could have been an all-star trio if he would have stayed in Portland. However, on the other end of this, LaMarcus Aldridge, I give him a lot of props for what he did in 2017-18 when Kawhi was out for all but 9 games. But 9 games. In that season, LaMarcus Aldridge took over. He did not care that Kawhi was out. Everyone on that team did not care that Kawhi was out. And the Spurs, they were able to grab that 7 seed, I believe. And I believe they lost to the Warriors in round 1 as the 7 seed. And that was Manu Ginobili's last season. And, of course, the Warriors went on to win the title that year. But LaMarcus Aldridge, that was an all-time season from him. 2017-18, Kawhi was out, and he basically just took the reins in San Antonio and was that all-star presence for them all season long and led them to the playoffs. Unfortunately, all for naught, but a good moment for Manu going out against the Warriors.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, man. It was shocking to hear that LaMarcus Aldridge didn't really pick up that mentor role for Damian Lillard in Portland because, Dame has no bad blood with LaMarcus, and he said that he's got nothing but love for him because he was a great player to look up to. But LaMarcus never really showed him the ropes, like never hit him up outside of the games, never really reached out and was like, hey, man, like let's work on this. Let's talk about this. It was a perfect way to put it. Yeah, his ego kind of got a bit in the way. He realized that, oh, maybe I can't be the number one guy here anymore. When, it would have been beneficial for his career, Dame's career, and the Portland Trailblazers' success if he stayed there and helped build a team. Imagine Yusuf Nurkic next to him. I mean, the defense on that team would have been atrocious. They would have got scored on left and right, but their offense would have been phenomenal. And you had guys like Mo Harkless and Alan Crabb, some in their time, some really solid role pieces to help make up on the defensive end. And I really do think that the game is going to miss guys like LaMarcus Aldridge because he's kind of like the last superstar of this build, this slower, doesn't really rely on his athleticism. He's simply a skill set guy. His intangibles and his fundamentals were sound as they could be. And, his prototype is a dying breed in today's NBA. I can't even think of a player that properly mirrors him in today's NBA, but the game's going to miss him. And hopefully we wish him nothing but continued success and health moving forward. Justin, what's our next topic up moving forward?
I just want one more thing on LaMarcus. I just want to say, I want to ask you both. Oscar, you go, and then I want to hear from Seamus as well. We sit here, and LaMarcus Aldridge, 17 years in the NBA. His last 2 seasons with the Brooklyn Nets. He retired September 3rd, 2021, after receiving he retired April 21st of 2021 due to health concerns that his heartbeat was irregular and it was progressing, and they feared of cardiac arrest if that continued. He re-signed with the Brooklyn Nets September 3rd, 2021 after receiving medical clearance. And then he reached 20,000 career points on October 29th with a 21-point outing in a win over the Indiana Pacers. So that was just kind of timeline of his time with the Brooklyn Nets. So he spent his final year and a half, 2 years with the Brooklyn Nets. But where do you see him, Oscar? When you say LaMarcus Aldridge, you don't see a picture, you don't see a video or a highlight of him. LaMarcus Aldridge, is he a Spur? Is he a Net? Is he a Trailblazer? What, in all seriousness, what do you view? What do you see when you hear LaMarcus Aldridge?
He's most definitely not a Net. I'll give you that. We're gonna mark that off right away.
Well, yeah, no. I'm just saying he played for the Nets. But I'm saying, I'm not sure. But when you hear him, it's pretty much between the Spurs and the Blazers, obviously. But where do you, when you hear LaMarcus Aldridge, is he a Spur? Is he a Blazer?
No. Seamus made a phenomenal point about his leadership and ability to take over when Kawhi was out in San Antonio. I think that's a very overlooked part of his career, especially because the Spurs weren't a flashy team and it doesn't generate a lot of media hype, showing slower guys who rely on ball movement to win games. If I were younger, if I were maybe like 14 years old, maybe I'd remember him more as a Spur. But I think that the only right answer, maybe not the only right answer, because I think you could make a case for the Spurs, but he's a Blazer. And when I think about, what he was able to accomplish in terms of just his impact on a team, he had some great impact on San Antonio, but Portland, he really put Portland on the map before Damian Lillard. And that's, unfortunately, I feel like that's going to become a forgotten aspect of not even just his career. Like, I don't think LaMarcus Aldridge will be a name that's talked about too much moving forward, and it hurts because he should be.
LaMarcus Aldridge is undoubtedly a trailblazer. I mean, I don't think anyone will regard him as a Net outside of the Brooklyn area. I mean, it seems like he had a cup of coffee there, and I can hardly – the only Net uniform I can picture him in is those goofy alternatives they had years ago. The Spurs, he had a nice run with the Spurs, but ultimately in 2016, when he did sign with the Spurs, he was maybe not so much quite in his prime at that moment, and his prime had already happened in Portland. So I definitely have to say LaMarcus Aldridge will be remembered as a Blazer. But regardless, what a career with 3 separate teams, each spot pretty much in a winning situation regardless.
Yeah, it's too bad he didn't go out with a ring, honestly. Like that's one guy that's on the list of vets you just always wished, could pull out a ring. It wouldn't have even mattered if it was at the end of his career. It would have just been a really great cherry on top for everything.
You know what vet might win a ring this year? Who hasn't won a ring yet, but is a Hall of Famer?
Mike Muscala?
Luke Cornett.
Blake Griffin, baby. Look at the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics are on a roll, baby. I'm all talk. I'm all excited. A week ago, the Celtics were in a totally different position than they're in right now. They were 4 games back from the number 1 seed, but now they're only a game and a half back with a 41-point victory over the Milwaukee Bucks in Milwaukee on national TV. Giannis was playing. Middleton was playing. Holiday was playing. I don't want to hear it. No excuses. The Celtics steamrolled the Milwaukee Bucks by 41 friggin' points. I want to talk with you, Oscar, but I want to talk with my boy Seamus, who him and I do the post-game shows over on Celtics Talk Weekly, so we know what we're friggin' talking about. Tatum and Brown, MVP caliber levels this past couple of weeks. Jaylen Brown's been on that with his mask, but Celtics, their last 5 wins won by an average of 27 points. Oscar is here, but I want to talk to Seamus first. Seamus, after a couple of weeks of real nice.
Keep it going.
After a couple of weeks in kind of the doghouse, are the Boston Celtics back? Are they the favorite to win the Eastern Conference, Seamus?
Well, I don't think they ever left being the favorite simply because you look at their entire.
Uh-oh. The most important part and the reason I wanted Seamus here.
Seamus, man, we've lost you. We can't hear you.
No, his Wi-Fi. This happens on the post-game shows. Okay, well, Seamus tries to figure that out. Oscar, are the Celtics back in there? I mean, they fell out of the 1 seed. 4 games
They never
back.
left. They never left. I agree with Seamus. No, it's funny how similarly I agree with Seamus on this show, but he, you know what? They are back. I'm gonna hand it right back to Seamus. Give it right back to him.
All right, Seamus gonna give it right back to you.
Okay.
All right, back to
me.
Oscar.
All right. No, it's hard. For a hot minute there, I was really starting to think, oh, maybe the Philly hype is real. Maybe the Sixers actually do have a chance to claim the East, and the Bucks have kind of been declining very slowly. Not really, but this Celtics win over Milwaukee really put them in the dirt, and it makes you think, are they capable of even pulling out a win against the Celtics in a playoff series? Because
really?
there's no more doubts about the Celtics being a very sound or inexperienced team in the playoffs. We saw what they were able to do against Golden State in the finals. And I genuinely think that they would probably beat the Bucks. I think that the series would go 4-1 Celtics. But my thing is, I think that the Sixers are a bigger threat to the Celtics than the Bucks would be at this point.
So I'm gonna let Seamus talk on this. But really quick, Oscar, I want to 2 things. One, I think the thing is with Boston is it's all about if they're big men. Not Tatum, not Brown. If their big men can stay healthy, because in my opinion, their biggest threat besides Milwaukee, it's not Philly, it's not Miami, it's not the Knicks, it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers I think the Celtics would take the Cavaliers, but I think the Cavaliers would push this series to 7. I think they give Boston hell, and I think their front court, if Boston is not healthy, will run Boston's front court out of the rim and out of the gym. And I think it all depends on Robert Williams staying healthy. We saw 18 minutes off the bench in that Milwaukee game of Robert Williams, and that was some of the most dominating 18 minutes I've seen from Robert Williams. Now, a regular season game in March, how does that affect a Eastern Conference Finals Game 7 in 2 months from now? Who knows? But I'll tell you right now, I'm going to kick this off to Seamus, but here's what I think. No bias. You do not You do not beat a team by 41 points. There is no, or excuse me, you don't lose to a team by 41 points. There is zero excuses for that. Second nights of back-to-backs. Prior to that, the Bucks were 8-2 on second nights of back-to-backs. Milwaukee was at home. Chris Middleton did not play. Joe Ingles did not play in that game against Indiana. Jay Crowder did not play. And Boston came in to Milwaukee. And this one wasn't a statement game. This game wasn't for the 1 seed. This was a, hello, we're here. We can come into your gym and do whatever we want. We did it game 6 last year in the semifinals. Guess what? We did it 2 months ago where, yes, we did lose, but we had all 5 of our starters were out. We forced you to overtime. It took a 50-point game from Jrue Holiday, or a 40-point game from Jrue Holiday in overtime to beat us by 6. And then we come in and we wipe you with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown combining for, I think, 71 points. That is domination at its finest, and that is Boston saying, we don't care if we're the 2 seed. We don't care if we're the 8 seed. We can come in and take care of business on the road. Doesn't matter if it's preseason, summer league, regular season, or finals. We will be there, and we will beat you. Seamus.
Yes, even amidst their stretch. Also, I apologize for my audio issues. Of course, a great time to have audio issues right amidst our Celtics talk. But I will say a Lakers fan did call me. So it was planned.
Ooh.
It was definitely planned, right? It had to be planned. But
wow.
Regardless, the Celtics right now have to be in the driver's seat of the East. That being said, nothing is quite done for them at this point in time. There's still a couple games to go in the regular season. And really the regular season, here we go. The regular season, the real season is in the playoffs. We all know this. The real season starts at playoff time. That is when the intensity is increased, and that is when teams are at their best. And the Celtics still need to make it through 4 rounds of the playoffs before anything they think about a trophy at all, because they still have some mighty competition in their way. You mentioned the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Milwaukee Bucks. Despite our 41-point beatdown the other night, I still believe the Milwaukee Bucks will give us a competition in a series, as we've seen in the past. And of course, Philly has been no joke this year either, and we can't count them out. And those are 3 really, really good opponents. And I believe the top 4 teams in the East right now, the Celtics, Bucks, Cavs, and Sixers, any of those teams at this point in time could make the finals. But I do believe the Celtics, because of their depth, does have an advantage aside from all of those teams. That being said, they still have a lot to prove against these teams in the playoffs going in. But their beatdown against Milwaukee the other night, 41 points on the road, that's certainly a good sign and a game you definitely want to have if you're a top team in the East or a top team in any conference going into the playoffs. Beating an opponent you know is going to be on your agenda later on down the road, or at least on someone else's agenda that you're going to have to face later on down the road. Beating them and gaining that confidence and having that kind of performance and adding that win to your record ultimately has to be a great feeling, and it's a positive game to have moving forward for the Celtics. As for their struggles the last couple of months, now this is where you can only say they can build upon what they've already achieved. Those struggles are in the past. The Celtics can either let those struggles come back or build upon what we've seen the past couple of games. And hopefully we've seen in the past the Celtics, specifically with this team, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams. This team has been together in the past, and they've been able to right their wrongs. And I don't think, coming from an unbiased Celtics fan, I don't think that they will fail at doing such a task going into the playoffs. And I do believe we're going to see another deep Celtics playoff run.
2 things, Seamus. One, I don't know if you caught that game. I don't know. You weren't on the post-game show, so I didn't get your initial thoughts. But that game kind of felt like last year, where a little bit after the trade deadline, it was like Harden's first game in Philly. He didn't play, but seeding was crucial after the trade deadline. Like, the Celtics were fighting for positioning. The Sixers were fighting to stay alive as well. Celtics going to Philly and beat Philly by like 50. I don't know if you remember that game. I can't see you on my screen, so I don't know if you're shaking your head yes or no or not. But did you kind of get those vibes from last year a little bit? Like, we went into Philly, pivotal game, and we gave Philly the business. And then this year we went into Milwaukee, pivotal game, and we gave Milwaukee the business.
I would say similar vibes, although I believe this one is a little bit more audacious in regards to where it is in the season. Last year, that Philly game, it was undoubtedly a moment of we may have surpassed this team in overall, just I don't want to say talent necessarily, but just in win structure per se. And this season, we kind of had the same performance in Milwaukee, but there's only a couple games left on the schedule. With that Philly game, there were about 20, 30 games left on our schedule, and that was still a crucial game. But the fact we beat Milwaukee this bad going into the playoffs, just a couple weeks away, really less than 2 weeks away, that's got to be a killer for them. But we'll see going into the playoffs. Both these teams are tough. All these teams are tough in the East, but any advantage you can gain going into the playoffs, whether it's rest or gaining some of these good performances, you're going to want to take them anywhere they come. And the Celtics certainly did in Milwaukee.
And another question I wanted to ask you, Seamus, is the Boston Celtics. I just have to pull it up here. The Boston Celtics are now 10-2 against the top 3 seeded teams in both conferences. 3-0 against the Sixers, 2-0 against the Grizzlies, 2-0 against the Kings, 2-1 against the Bucks, and 1-1 versus the Denver Nuggets. They tend to turn it on and off when they want, including 3 losses to the Orlando Magic, including losses to the Indiana Pacers, the Houston Rockets, the Utah Jazz, the Indiana Pacers. The list goes on. Now, look, you're going to lose games. That happens. It's an 82-game season. There's excuses. There's all this and that. But in the end, the Celtics are beating the team they're supposed to beat. But is there a little concern where the Celtics have that on and off switch? Because I talk about it all the time on the postgame show, and this, is going into the playoffs, not only do you want to play your best basketball, but you want to go in building good habits. In losing to teams like the Washington Wizards by 22 points when you're fully healthy is not a good habit to have. And then beat Milwaukee by 40 the next game, which is great, but it's bittersweet, Seamus.
Yeah, I believe any good team certainly has that on and off switch and can have that on and off switch. I mean, the best team we've seen this century, the Golden State Warriors, the past, let's see, 2015 really to 2019. And then, of course, last year's Golden State team, that's one of the greatest teams ever in history. And they had that on and off switch and had those problems on night to night outside, of course, maybe that 2016 season where they only lost 9 games. I mean, what a ridiculous stat looking back at that season. We actually lived through that, guys, 73-9. But ultimately, I believe each good team has that on and off switch. And the Celtics, it's just about managing that and not allowing it to overcome you at bad moments, especially during the playoffs. You never want that to creep up on you in the playoffs. The regular season is really when we talk about the problem. You want to be, like you said, forming good habits going into the playoffs so that doesn't happen. And of course, the Celtics have slipped up in a couple of moments, but this is ultimately the moment in the season going into the playoffs. Right now, the last couple of weeks, we saw some slippery play from the Celtics. However, we also saw some really dominant play from the Celtics as of late. And these next couple of games, you want to see the Celtics establish themselves right before they go into the playoffs, where you hope they don't ever turn off that switch all the way to the finals and hopefully until they're holding up that trophy. But we all know they're going to have their moments. They had their moments this season, but it's all about managing and minimizing those moments at the moments in which are crucial, of course, and that's every moment in the playoffs.
Yeah. Oscar, final 4 games of the regular season for the Boston Celtics. They do only sit a game and a half back from the Milwaukee Bucks for that number 1 seed. What is more important for Boston right now, that number 1 seed or just going into the postseason with a healthy roster? Because typically the last 2 weeks, you see a lot of load management going on in the NBA. Is the importance of health more important than that number 1 seed for the Celtics?
I think that's the safe bet. Honestly, I think really, because when it comes down to it, you always love to have that in the back pocket that you know you're going to have home court advantage all the way through. And people really kind of underestimate how important that is to team success in the playoffs. That being said, I think we can take a lot from this 41-point game. 41-point win against Milwaukee. I don't think that it's one of those passing games where things just happen to go all the way wrong for Milwaukee and things miraculously went right for Boston. Boston exploited Milwaukee. They pointed out every single flaw in Milwaukee's system. And I said earlier when Seamus was having trouble connecting to the show, I said that I honestly, if I'm Boston, I'm more scared about Philadelphia than I am Milwaukee. And I know that's a hot take because Milwaukee just seems so sound. They have everything figured out in terms of their bigs, and their guard play has been pretty solid. Drew Holiday is having arguably the best season of his career. I genuinely think that, focusing on the team's health, I just look into it. Like how in history, how many times has a finals contending team lost a very valuable piece in the last 5 games of the season? Because even if they play 10 minutes a game, the risk really isn't there, because they're not playing to prove anything. They're playing to just make sure that they stay in the spot that they're in. I'm sitting them or playing them less than they usually play. I don't think the 1 seed is as important as the team's health.
I would say that this Philadelphia game coming up for Boston on Tuesday is probably the second biggest game in terms of, I think that Milwaukee game was the largest game of the season, biggest game for the Celtics. But not only do you want to lock up that 2 seed, because you do in a second round, if Philly gets by in the first round, you do want home court advantage as long as you can in the playoffs. And if that only means the first and second round, it is what it is. So I think you go heavy for that Philly game and use that as your Eastern Conference semifinals game, I guess, like your study guide, your cheat sheet, like you're almost guaranteed to meet the Philadelphia in the second round. So treat this as your semifinals game 7. And then on top of that, I had something else I wanted to say. Crap, I forgot, to be honest with you. It was, I thought it was a valid point, but clearly not valid enough for me to remember.
Invalid at this point. I think that we will go ahead and start talking about our top 10 Celtics jerseys.
Yeah. So
we're on the topic.
Seamus, so since you were kind of a last second addition to today's show, you just get to sit back, relax, enjoy this, and give us your opinions, because you and I talk uniforms all the time. So I know your favorite uniforms, but Oscar, let's start with yours, because I wanna.
I'm very interested in this segment, I gotta say.
Oh yeah. Wait 1 second, really quick. I wanted to mention this. I think. Hold on.
It's invalid.
Listen. People are only, and when I say people, I think Bucks fans and people who just hate the Celtics in general. Celtics beat Milwaukee on Christmas Day by 21 points. Boston goes into Milwaukee a month later. If you want to really throw excuses out there, you can, but no Tatum, no Horford, no Smart, no Jaylen Brown. You only had 11 minutes of Robert Williams out the bench. Celtics lost that game by 6 in overtime on the road. Flash forward a month ahead with 5 games left. They go into Milwaukee, a healthy Milwaukee, and beat them by 41 points. You add 21, then -6, and then add 41. That's a plus 56 on Milwaukee this year. That is absolutely ridiculous. A plus 56. And that's something where Boston, I think you'd rather stay healthy. You'd love to get that 1 seed and get home court advantage throughout the playoffs, but you beat them game 6 on the road last year. You beat them, you beat them by a combined 56 points, and 2 of those were on the road this year. I think you live with that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
No.
Oscar. Oh wait, no. Seamus said something. Okay, go ahead. Seamus.
Oh no, we're good. I was saying Milwaukee ultimately. I mean, if we're talking, seeding, say 1 and 2 here with Milwaukee, I mean that means we're going to have to meet them in the conference finals ultimately. If we're just going to jockey 1 and 2, right. And really that's just the question of who has Game 7 on their home court. To potentially go to the NBA Finals. The Celtics won a Game 7 on, well, technically 2 Game 7s last year. If you factor in Game 6 in Milwaukee, that was really a Game 7 for them. It was a do or die game. They won 2 Game 7s on the road last year. Maybe the Celtics do feel as if they can win anywhere at this point in time. And two, maybe Milwaukee, they look at them and go, well, we might be able to handle them in 5 or 6, and we might not even need that Game 7 at this point in time. So the Celtics, I think, for sure have a good hand on Milwaukee at this moment in time. But let's look at these jerseys. Yes.
All right.
right.
Go ahead, Oscar.
I'm going to break these down, and the order looked a lot different than Justin's. I'm going to start off by saying you guys need more jerseys. You needed more jerseys 20 years ago for me to actually incorporate anything older. But let's start it off. I have always loved this first, the 2021 earned jerseys. That trim just does it all for me. I don't need to go any further into that. I simply think of Jay Crowder and, the Isaiah Thomas era Celtics when I look at the Christmas jersey from 2017. What a phenomenal era. I genuinely enjoyed watching the Celtics this season. Avery Bradley was a stud. I believe Evan Turner was on this team too. Just a lot of likable guys. And it was the best of those basic Christmas jerseys. You know what I mean? They never really I think these were probably the best ones that they came out with. And the Celtics just looked great with it. Next one. This is undisputed. I think this is in everyone's top 5. The 2030 this season's City jerseys. I love the fact that they went darker with the green and the beige trim. Yeah, it's something different. It's not like what we've seen in previous Celtics jerseys. Not a lot of influence from previous Celtics jerseys. It really stood out and sort of stepped away from the traditionalism of the Celtics organization. Number 4, it was like the perfect mix of basic and eye-catching. I love this. The white trim everywhere was placed perfectly. I'm a huge fan. Number 5, I just think of Terry Rozier in these things. The City jerseys from 2018. I love gray jerseys, and I love the green trim around it. Number 6, so many St. Patty's jerseys to pick from, and I thought this one was okay. This one was the best one. The gold trim looks a little kind of it looks like it's dyed out a little bit in this filter, but it's more gold in real life. This one was the cleanest one of the Celtics St. Pat's jerseys, and you guys can correct me. I'm not sure how many they had, but I think it was like 2 or 3 different ones that they had on rotation throughout the years. These ones, in my opinion, were the cleanest. At first, I wasn't a fan. I told Justin that the yellow text was ugly, and I kind of looked at it compared to the other Celtics jerseys, and I said, this one was cool. I like this one. It was a lot better than the alternate version of it, the white one with the green Boston text and the yellow trim around the green Boston text, where you couldn't even tell that there was yellow trim around it. Next, the classic, the Rajon Rondo jersey, the alternates for over 10 seasons. And then to round it up, the 97 to 2004 away jerseys. I thought, I think this was a more of a rough era for the Celtics. I might be getting my years wrong, but I think this is kind of when it was the Paul Pierce is just kind of kicking, that era is just kind of kicking off, and their reign of dominance was at a standstill. And to wrap it up, the Isaiah Thomas sleeve jerseys. Are you kidding me? I know Justin hates these sleeve jerseys, but Seamus,
I don't hate them. It's just like, eh.
I gotta know, Seamus, are you a sleeve jersey guy? Do you agree with my picks? What do you think?
I go against the populace on sleeve jerseys. I love sleeve jerseys at the end of the day.
Let's go!
I love sleeve jerseys. The Clippers old
man.
sleeve jerseys, the teal blue or that
baby blue,
sky blue.
Yeah.
Yes. The jerseys Steph Curry was dominating in 2015, of course. If anybody remembers those. The Cavs winning the NBA Finals in sleeve jerseys, maybe one of the greatest NBA Finals ever. Looking back at 2016 in sleeve jerseys, and of course the Celtics, those gray jerseys. Not too many people loved number 10 there, the 14 to 17 alternative, but I gotta say, I enjoyed looking at those jerseys, watching those jerseys on Sunday afternoon. So I'm a big fan of sleeve jerseys, and I wouldn't be opposed if they brought them back. But according to the players, I'm not too.
I would say that 17 to 18 jersey is kind of that quote unquote, we're bringing it back type thing. Like, you know how this year's statement Cavs jerseys are the black ones with the Cavs logo? Like, that's literally the sleeve jersey without the sleeves, which I still think is sick. Okay, that's a solid list. Solid list. I mean, all Celtics jerseys are pretty much the same. So just with different colorways. But these are mine. I think this is a good list. Oh no, I forgot to ask Seamus. Seamus, I was gonna say, Seamus, you and I have been working together since like 2016. Did you know that this was my favorite Celtics jersey of all time? Number one.
I believe you may have mentioned it, but I'm not surprised. I mean, I love those alternatives, and I believe we had a conversation about how they should bring these back. So I'm not all that surprised. But I will say I am surprised about this. Number 5 on this list.
Yep.
Not on the other list. This one's a classic.
Yeah.
And it could say it honestly. It says 17 to 23 home, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's been around since the 40s.
I was going to say it could say 46 to 23.
Right.
But I got to say I'm not all that surprised. I do like that jersey as well.
All right, look, man, I think this list is so sick. I'm so excited about this list. I think this is the best jersey list I've ever put together. All right, look, number one.
Keep it in your pants, buddy.
The number, no, it's out. It's fully extended. Number one is the reason why it's extended. I just absolutely love this jersey, and it's such a simple colorway. It's like, what are you talking about? Instead of white, it's black. It's like, but like, I think people tend to forget, like, growing up, alternate jerseys weren't popular. Like, they weren't around as much as they are now. Like tonight, like go to tonight's NBA slate, and every single game, at least one of the two teams is wearing an alternate jersey. This one was like a classic, like, you know, like they'll wear it occasionally, like on a Friday or a Sunday, a weekend game or a national TV game. And it was just such a privilege. And it was really a treat. Back then, it was a treat to wear alternate jerseys. So yeah, that's my number one, easily, hands down. Number 2 is this year's City Edition jersey, their Bill Russell jersey. I love the green and black. They used that in this jersey. I love the green and gold that they used. And then on top of that, the details, the side, this was Bill Russell. Bill Russell had passed away. They've been working on this jersey even before he passed away. So this jersey was in the works before Bill Russell had passed away.
Hey, get the camera on Seamus real quick. Get the camera on Seamus. He's got something to show us.
We gotta go back to number 1 real quick and just detail this a little bit more.
What is it? What is it? I can't see him.
He's got the Marcus Smart jersey. In the number 1 in the alternates. Those are clean.
Yeah.
Just beauty.
Those
man. That's how it's done. You guys. Now I want one too. I want a Luigi Datome one. Come on.
No, respect. Yeah, dude, those jerseys, number 1, like they're so clean. And yeah.
They really are.
The Bill Russell jerseys, number 2 for me. I mean, those instantly, the design, and then on the side, it had the diamonds, the years that Bill Russell won the title, as well as the parquet in black. 2022 City Edition jersey. This is like every single Celtic jersey mashed into one. This font was taken from a 1946 jersey. I believe it was the first ever Celtic jersey with the bubble letters. And then in the back, you can't see it, but it's actually a nameplate. Like, you know, on Christmas Day, they used to do the nameplates.
Yep.
That's what it's got on the back. So the number is on top and the nameplate is on the bottom. And then on the sides of the shorts, you'll see gray. That gray comes from the cigar smoke of the famous Red Auerbach, who used to smoke his cigars. And then it also has down below the waist, it has a 2008 championship hat. Or no, it has the retired numbers as well as the championship banners, the years that the Celtics won it. So that's a pretty cool jersey. The detail on that was it made it a top 3 jersey of all time for me. And then the St. Patrick's Day jersey. So yours, I agree, were more clean, but I think these were more iconic.
Agreed.
Just the gold. I think the gold it's true gold. It's not like a yellow or you know, beige. It's just true gold, green and gold with the pinstripes. Beautiful jersey.
Do you guys remember when the Lakers switched from gold to yellow? That one
season,
the canary yellow.
Yes.
That was particularly ugly considering players just had no idea how to match their shoes with the uniform.
Yes.
Right.
It was rough.
All I think of is Brooke Lopez wearing that jersey, and it haunts me.
Yeah.
That's when I thought his career was over. I was like, we're not going to see much of Brooke Lopez anymore. And boy, was I wrong.
My
Oh
number
my God.
my number 5, I feel like this one is just such an iconic jersey. I mean, like Seamus said earlier, I mean, this was really been worn since the 1940s, since the Celtics were established. Look, it's such a basic, simple jersey, but it's just so clean. And the Celtics have been wearing this jersey, this uniform, a lot on the road as well. I like to stick to the classic home on the parquet, but I also do like how the Celtics have been utilizing this uniform a lot more. It's just such a clean jersey overall. I'm super glad that they haven't changed really anything about this jersey in a while, other than of course, the required Nike logo, as well as the Vista print patch. And then number 6, to round out the bottom of my list, the 2019-2020 City Edition uniforms. This was the bubble year before the bubble. Just such a at first Ennis Canner leaked these on the internet, and they were like a blue and like a blue and a yellow font, and then the jerseys actually came out. They put them on the court, and it's just such a perfect green and gold. I love the font, the Irish font. Just such a clean jersey, and I just remember some iconic games. Like one of them was the game against the Clippers. That double overtime game was so awesome. I don't know if you remember that, Seamus.
That was the day, February 13th, 2020, the day Jason Tatum became a superstar.
Yeah, and this is exactly
39
what that
points
picture
against
is.
Kawhi and Paul George. 39.
And then this 18-19
back when it was cool.
Earned jersey for me. It's just super clean jersey. Great Christmas jersey as well. They wore it on Christmas Day, and this was one of the really good moments with Kyrie Irving. I mean, when he was healthy and he was not a head case, and when he was playing basketball games, we had some great memories with Kyrie. Remember untucked jersey Kyrie Irving, masked Kyrie Irving. This was just an iconic Christmas Day game between the Celtics and Sixers, back and forth on the parquet, and Irving just exploded that game. And then a 1965 remake of their away jersey. They wore them in 2008, 2007, 2008, when the year they won the title. I just think this is such a clean jersey. These were like the Bill Russell jerseys back when he played. I mean, it's really, other than the font being so spaced out in the font style, it's really the same jersey they have today. Just a simple green and white jersey. I just love the font on this. Such an iconic jersey. Then a uniform nobody really talks about. Celtics didn't wear this that much in this season. This was kind of the start of the City Edition uniforms, and they were trying to expand it. But these parquet jerseys, the parquet and the gray, just super clean jersey. I vividly remember getting spanked by the Cavaliers in these jerseys in the Paul Pierce retirement game. But other than that, there was just such a sexy jersey, such a clean jersey. And then the 17-20 statements, say 17 to 2023 statement edition uniforms, kind of a reverse of our old alternate. Celtics, instead of going green and black, they went with a black base and a green trim, which that enough, believe it or not, is out of tradition for the Boston Celtics, which surprisingly for years, I feel like everybody's been asking for a black uniform, and now it seems like people aren't really beginning to like those uniforms. But I think the Celtics, for how basic their jerseys are, I think we both put together very solid lists. Seamus, be honest. What list do you like better? Just be honest.
I definitely would have to side with Oscar on this one. However,
oh my god, oh my god, what the hell?
Wait, let's see these two again. Let me just compare and contrast.
No. You said what
my
you said.
man. He knows what he's liking.
Wait, go back. Wait.
What the hell?
I have pitfalls with both of these lists. Trust me. Number one, I do not agree with Oscar at all. Okay, that jersey would not even be on my list. So number one is gone. But I will say, I like.
Whose top three do you like better? That's more important.
Let him answer the damn question.
Well, it's more of like collective list, right? But I have a problem with the white Celtics jersey not being on this list. I would I would easily take out. Now, this may be a little bit biased because of the game that Justin mentioned, but 2017-18, that City jersey, number 5 there. Bad memories. Bad memories. All I remember is Kyrie wore yellow shoes. He made one jumper against LeBron, and the Garden went nuts. And the rest of the night, it was Jordan Clarkson. It was
so bad.
everyone they added at the trade deadline. It was Kyle Korver. It was everybody who wasn't a member of the Celtics. That being said, it was an okay jersey, but every time I see it, I'm like, oh man, we totally botched that Paul Pierce retirement game. But if we were to go back to these lists here real quick, let's see. Let's go back to your list, Justin. Let's see this real quick. I've never been a huge fan of number 10, the statement jersey.
Yeah.
I think, here's my personal opinion on the statement jersey. If there wasn't so much green on the side trim of the pants and jersey, which they actually did take the side green out of the jersey.
Yeah, it's the old one.
But they still left it on the pants, unfortunately. I think if you took the side green out, it would look a lot better. However, I'm not a huge fan of that. I would say up close, the jersey does look a bit better. I would, rethinking these, re-looking at these lists.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You do it. Don't do it.
God damn it, Seamus, do it! I can't believe you.
Wait, go back to the other list.
Oh my God.
I'm making.
Let the
y'all
man
go
ponder.
graphics.
Let him ponder. He's gotta think.
Can we at least admit my top 3 are better than his top 3?
Why do you need to win this, man? Like, it's okay.
No. I'm just saying, like, I think my top 3 are unbeatable. I do. It's not even the fact that it's you, Oscar. I think my top 3 are unbeatable.
See, here's the thing. I think I'm judging on content of the list rather than the actual list itself. Like, if you were to rank these, like 2020 to 2021 earned being number 1 is just can't do that.
Okay.
That being said, the contents of the whole entire list, if you were to take that one off, if you were to take the City jersey off, I like every other jersey on this list. I will say that. As for Justin's list, let's go back to Justin's list.
I feel like you agree with the top 5 and you don't agree with the bottom 5 with Justin's list.
I would take out the City jersey in Justin's list and maybe the statement jersey.
The
17-18 City jersey. Sorry, I should have specified that. The 2021-22 City jersey is one of my favorites, and probably it was probably slotting number 3 for me as well. I would go home number 1, away number 2, like our normally now. I would go last year's City number 3. I would go the gold number 4 for sure, but I would go 15-17 gold personally. Over those.
So, Seamus, what you are going to do after this, I know you might be busy, but you're going to make your top 10 list out, send it to Oscar so Oscar can make a graphic so we can post these on the Instagram to advertise the episode. But I think
I feel like I have one somewhere. I have to have one. I mean, I ran a Celtics page for 6-7 years. It's like I got to have a list somewhere. It doesn't even include the new jerseys, probably.
Yeah,
I want Seamus to come on the episode when we talk about Magic jerseys. I think he's got his head in the right place when we're talking about these.
Which
jerseys.
is going to be soon because we wanted to get the Atlantic Division out of the way. But I think overall, I do think we both put together pretty solid lists.
Yeah, I wasn't shocked that you guys didn't love my number 1. I get that. That's fair. And I feel like
your number 1. I don't love it number 1. I don't love it top 8, 10. It might. Fair. I like it better than. I like it better than your last 2 jerseys, but I don't think it's number 1. But it's a very underrated Celtics jersey. I wish they wore that more that season.
The great thing about all this is that I don't value your opinion at all. So I'm going to go ahead and keep making lists my way and keep putting my number 1s what I want them to be.
That's why
it's all perspective too, because from say other fans, say like I almost said Magic fan. I meant to say Jazz fan, because their jersey change was quite drastic this past season. Say a Jazz fan, they've had quite a few jersey changes since the 80s, whereas the Celtics pretty much just the same the entire time. So a Celtics fan, Justin and I, we're gonna think, we're going to keep these jerseys the same. Like if you go out of bounds and start throwing neon green on our jersey, we're not gonna appreciate that too often. Whereas Utah Jazz fan, they've had purple, green, yellow, neon yellow.
You know
Teal
what though?
blue. I mean,
Yeah.
they've had everything in the box. It's just throw something else out there. They've had red. I mean, orange.
Yeah.
What color have they not had at this point? The Utah Jazz. I don't really know.
Say,
so,
no, it was absolutely atrocious what they submitted as their jerseys this year. What they ended up going with. I thought I don't know if you guys remember when those reports came out that the Jazz might rebrand and they might have these new jerseys, and it was the jerseys that they're wearing now. Everybody was like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" Like the Carlos Boozer, Darren Williams era Jazz jerseys were awesome. And
is that the blue ones?
Those are the blue ones, yeah. And then the Gordon Hayward era was like, oh no, not a fan, not really. And then they fell off a friggin' cliff this year. I have a feeling they're not going to stick with it for too long.
Really quick, I think it's going to be tough with the Cleveland Cavaliers because they had a new set of uniforms every friggin' time LeBron James was every LeBron James year. I think those guys have rebranded 8 times in the last 2.5 years. So I think that's going to be hard. But for now, guys, you can, if you missed it, we're going to post the lists over on our Instagram later on today. But I think this was a fun episode. It was really good to have you back on the show, Seamus, because you were a part of the show in our earlier days. So it was really cool to have you on. Oscar did a great job leading today. You took the lead today. You were like the team captain today. So jeez. I appreciate that a lot. I just had to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. But for now, I'm Justin. That's Oscar. That's Seamus. And we'll catch you guys next week for